at, trust in your administration. And it leads people to think that, you know what, they may have something on him. Maybe that's why he won't release the documents. Bobby Jr. and his mom pull into the driveway. He gets out of the car. He's walking past his dad and he's looking at his dad. And he hears his dad say to McCone, "Tell me your people didn't do this." And McCone says, "I don't know who did it." I think that Trump really believed that as soon as we started hitting the Iranians and we killed not just Ayatollah Khamenei, but virtually the entire defense leadership, he really believed the country would just collapse like a house of cards. And it didn't. So we may have bitten off more than we could chew.
In your opinion, or experience, I should say.
I believe pretty firmly that Jeffrey Epstein was a spy, but not in the traditional sense of a James Bond kind of spy. I think that he was what we call an access agent, most likely for Mossad, but it's deeper than that, and I'll explain that in a second. An access agent is, well, to explain an access agent, let's say that you are a foreign intelligence service, and you want information from some of the most powerful, some of the most important people on earth. You're not going to recruit Bill Clinton or Bill Gates or Prince Andrew or the British ambassador of the United States. Those people are not recruitable, and they don't need money. So money is not going to motivate them. So you hire instead somebody who has access to those people, somebody who can wine them and dine them, make them comfortable, have them drop their guard. They speak a little bit out of school, and then you can report that back to your handlers. That's valuable information. When I was in training, when I was in CIA training, one of my instructors said something that has stuck with me for all these years. He said that the best recruitment he ever made over a 30-year career was a copy machine repairman. And we all laughed. And he said, "Hear me out. We all wish that we could go overseas and recruit the prime minister. None of us are going to recruit the prime minister. But you recruit a copy machine repairman, knowing that the prime minister's copy machine is going to go down eventually, or it's going to need to be serviced or cleaned. And so when that happens, he goes into the prime minister's office. Security is there to make sure, he doesn't steal documents or whatever. He's not interested in that. What he does is, as he's cleaning and servicing the copy machine, he's installing a little device that we created so that every time somebody makes a copy on that machine, it transmits a copy to Langley. That's an access agent. You haven't recruited the prime minister, but you did the next best thing, because everything that the prime minister is seeing, you are now seeing. I believe that Mossad recruited Jeffrey Epstein as an access agent, either to collect information from these very, very important people, or to plant the Mossad's point of view on XYZ issue in the minds of these very important people. Now, in this latest tranche of the Epstein documents, among horrors, we also learned that he repeatedly reached out to the CIA and the FBI, volunteering to help them and to do work for them. He did the same with the British MI5 and MI6, and he repeatedly attempted to engage with what was then the KGB, now the SVR, to get a one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin. The Russians actually offered him a meeting with Putin and 2 national security aides, and he turned it down. He said he needed for it to be one-on-one with Putin, and the Russians weren't biting. So I think that this was all about the Mossad. Now, and I'll preface this by saying that Les Wexner adamantly denies this, but I think they may have been lovers. Jeffrey Epstein was a junior high school substitute math teacher with no college degree. I would love to own the widest townhouse in Manhattan. I would love to own my own island in the Caribbean and my own fleet of private jets, but I'm a normal person. Normal people don't just fall into something like that. We know that the origin of his wealth, I won't say the basis, but the origin of his wealth was with or from Les Wexner. Les Wexner being, of course, the wealthiest man in the state of Ohio. And
Right.
Les Wexner latched on to Jeffrey Epstein, adopted, so to speak, Jeffrey Epstein, without any logical reason for doing so. There had to be 500,000 people in the United States that would have been better qualified to manage this billionaire's money. Why Jeffrey Epstein? So I think that the Israelis directed him to target Les Wexner. That's what got him started. Wexner testified a couple of weeks ago that he was the one that had spoken to the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds said, "Oh, you should talk to our friend Jeffrey Epstein. He manages our money." How is that even possible? The guy was a 7th grade substitute math teacher with no college degree, and he's managing the Rothschild family's billions? It doesn't make any sense. So I think that this was one of those very long-term operations. You know, it's easy to fall into sort of a rut where we as CIA officers compare our operations with the operations of other intelligence services. We have a very limited timeline in our operations. You don't get promoted if you don't make a recruitment. And if you don't make a recruitment in 6 months or 12 months, you move on. And you move on to the next guy or the next issue or whatever. The Israelis, the Russians, the Cubans, they have a much longer term view where they'll pluck somebody out of obscurity like Jeffrey Epstein, and they'll manage him for 20 years, 30 years, no matter how long it takes. They know that in the end, he's going to be able to report to them.
Wow.
In 2009, I was the chief investigator on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and a journalist from the New Yorker magazine called me and said that she had information that John Brennan, who at the time was the Deputy National Security Advisor for Counterterrorism, was hosting meetings at the White House every Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock called the Tuesday Morning Kill List meetings. I said, "What are you talking about?" So she came to my office, closed the door. We had this off-the-record conversation. It's on the record now because she published it. But she said that every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., John Brennan chaired a meeting made up of attorneys from the Justice Department, the CIA, and the White House, as well as representatives from the CIA's Special Activities Division. And they would come up with a list of people to kill that week. They would agree on the list.
Wow.
Brennan would sign it on behalf of the president, and then the teams would fan out around the world, kill everybody that was on the list, and then meet again the next Tuesday morning for that week's list of people to kill. And I think that she was probably responsible for White House approval for all those assassinations. Now, you can't go to the Washington Post if you're John Brennan and say, "Hey, shout out to Catherine Remler. She helped me kill so many people. I just want to say what a great patriot she is." You can't do that. So you give her an award that nobody is supposed to know about. It's a classified award. And then she blew the classification by immediately emailing Jeffrey Epstein and saying, "John Brennan just gave me the top award that the CIA has." It's sick.
Wow. You know, John, I'm glad you just verified something for me. I always looked at John Brennan as one of the most arrogant guys. I just didn't like anything about him, and everything that I've seen with him. I likened him. He was a worse version, in my opinion, of J. Edgar Hoover. And I said, this guy must have a lot
Great
of
analogy.
dirt on a lot of people.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I really believe that. But man,
is
to hear
absolutely
something like
true.
that, an actual kill list.
Oh, yeah. An
Wow.
actual kill list. And in the beginning, Brennan denied that any such thing existed. And then when the magazine found enough people, and it was like a half a dozen people sitting, current CIA people saying, of course we have a kill list. What do you think we do all day long? They were able to run with the story
Wow.
and publish it. Literally every single time they would come, no matter who the prime minister was, no matter who the American president was, they would ask us to bomb Iran. Every single time. And I mean going back to the 80s. And every single president would say, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be the start of World War III. I'm not going to do it. In fact, George H.W. Bush, the father, actually revoked loan guarantees for Israeli housing construction because the Israelis would not stop with these constant requests to bomb Iran. We always sort of hoped that the Iranians would turn around, they would agree to talks, maybe we would go through the Omanis, maybe we'd go through the Algerians, and then everybody could live happily ever after. That never happened. But there was this constant drumbeat of pressure from the Israelis that we've got to bomb Iran, you've got to bomb Iran. Well, we didn't bomb Iran until Donald Trump. And I have friends at the White House, I have friends in the administration, and they all tell me the same thing. They say that Trump agreed to bomb Iran because Benjamin Netanyahu threatened him and told him, if you don't bomb Iran, we're going to use nuclear weapons against Iran. Now, of course, the Israelis have never admitted that they have a nuclear program, but analysts believe that they have between 80 and 200 nuclear warheads. The Israelis are not signatories to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Interestingly enough, the Iranians are. I can also tell you that the deal that we had with the Iranians that was called the JCPOA and the deal that the United Nations had with the Iranians were identical to the deal that the International Atomic Energy Agency had negotiated with Saddam Hussein's Iraq for observation of Iraq's weapons programs. Lead seals on every door, cameras pointing, 360 degrees, spot inspections with no warning, no coordination. The Iranians had agreed to all of that. In addition to the Iranians agreeing, the CIA wrote 2 national intelligence estimates. This is the highest level analysis that's produced by the entire American intelligence community. 2 of them over the last 10 years saying that the Iranians do not have a nuclear program. It was always a joke at the CIA, Mike, when Netanyahu would come to Washington. He would always be invited to address Congress, which is unusual. But every time he comes, he's invited to address Congress. And he would always say that the Iranians are 6 months away from a nuclear weapon. Well, you've been saying that since 1986. And they're still 6 months away from a nuclear weapon. Well, they're not. They never were. And not only did the CIA assess that they were not, but the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed a week or 2 ago, issued a fatwa saying that it was a sin to build a nuclear weapon and that to build a nuclear weapon would be punishable by death. But we just took Netanyahu at his word. Well, in July, when we did bomb Iran at Netanyahu's request, you'll recall that the president said that the Iranian nuclear program had been obliterated, his word. It had been obliterated. It no longer exists. And then from July until now, oh my God, they're 6 months away from a nuclear weapon. So I have a friend who is close to the president, and I said to him at the time that the documents were released, about a year ago, I said, thank God that the president finally released the remaining documents. And he said, no, he didn't. I said, yeah, he did. He was compelled by law. Congress passed a law twice compelling the president to release all documents related to the Kennedy assassination. He said, there are 10,000 documents that are never going to be released. And I said, why? And he said, because every single one of them points directly at Israel. And I said, oh man,
Wow.
that's not one that I was thinking of. He says that the Israelis were so angry that A, John Kennedy wouldn't give them nuclear technology. But more importantly, B, he was actively trying to disrupt the Israelis from acquiring nuclear technology. And they decided they had to take him out. Crazy, isn't it?
This is fascinating, John. Why is it that Israel seems to have this much say over the American government? I mean, I don't get it. I mean,
Yeah, I don't either.
I mean, they're a small little country.
Yeah.
I know there are only, well, not only, but there are major ally in the Middle East. But why do they have this kind of power and control? Is it? I don't know. I don't get it.
The Israelis genuinely believe that they are alone in the world. They know that we're close, but they're afraid that we might not be so close tomorrow. And so they genuinely believe that it is them against the world. And if they are not among the strongest powers in the world, they're going to end up floating in the Mediterranean. And so they made a strategic decision in the middle 1950s that they were going to have as much of an impact in American elections as they possibly could. AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, was created in the 1950s as a domestic lobbying organization supporting Israeli foreign policy goals. Every country has lobbyists in Washington. There's nothing unusual about that. What's unusual about it, though? Well, there are several things. Number one, AIPAC is the only one of these organizations that does not have to register as a foreign agent. Why? I don't know why. They're clearly working on behalf of Israel, but they pretend that they're not, and so they don't have to register as foreign agents. More importantly, they really started focusing on fundraising for American elections in the late 1960s. And then they were successful in getting President Nixon in 1969 to guarantee Israeli national security. Okay, we had never said that before, beginning with Harry Truman. You know, Harry Truman said that his role in the creation of the state of Israel made him, quote, a damn fool. That he was a damn fool for creating that country. And he said it was the biggest regret of his presidency because it spun out of control almost immediately. So they created AIPAC in the 50s. They convinced Nixon to guarantee their national security in 69. And then they start going from, being able to raise a couple of $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, to raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that would allow them to be competitive in literally every political race in America. And I'll tell you a funny thing, Mike. I shouldn't smile because it's actually not funny. So a buddy of mine is he's one of these like civic leaders in Texas. And so he's friendly with a state senator in Austin. And the state senator called him, this is about a month ago, and said, hey, listen, I'm going to propose a resolution to make a day named after you, like the Bill Smith Day. And he said they do about 140 of these a year. Whoever's, you're the head of the Social Security Commission or whatever, they're going to make a Mike Franzese Day. And you get a big certificate with the gold seal and the governor signs it and everything. He said it's all pro forma. A couple of weeks later, he calls back and he says, hey, listen, that Bill Smith Day, that's not going to happen. And my buddy said, why? He said, AIPAC killed it. And I said, AIPAC? In the state legislature in Texas, it turns out that they have lobbyists in all 50 state legislatures. It's not just the House and the Senate here in Washington. He told me they're even involved in local races, not just the New York mayoral race. They're involved in races for mayor all over the country and for city council all over the country because they want to make the United States a 100% pro-Zionist country. And they're succeeding.
Well, John, I got to ask you this, and it may seem that we're bouncing around, but the Israeli connection makes it very interesting. Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk.
Everybody, well, there's a lot of people out there that believe that Israel was behind his assassination. What do you have to say about that? I mean, I always said no, but I'm learning something here right now. I mean,
I always said no too, but there are so many people out there, Mike, who I respect. People far more important than I could ever be, who say, wait a minute. There's enough there that we should at least investigate it. We should at least look at it. I don't think that it was, the Egyptian Air Force, like Candace Owens says, that the Egyptian Air Force killed him. But Charlie was kind of cutting an independent path. And there are a lot of interests out there that don't want people to take independent paths. And so at the very least, I think we owe it, well, certainly to Charlie's family and more broadly to the American people to investigate this thing.
I've always maintained that I spent 7 months in MDC. Out of my 29 months in solitary, 7 months was in MDC. I find it very, very tough to believe that he could have committed suicide based upon my experience there. Add to that what I've read, and I think it's been verified that it took the FBI, who are right across the street from MDC, 7 hours before they came over to investigate the fact that their main inmate in that jail was committed suicide.
Yeah.
And I've maintained this. There's no way he could have committed suicide. So my theory behind it was that he probably said to whoever, hey, I got dirt on every one of you. You get me out of this like you got me out of this earlier, or some heads are going to fly. I'm going to reveal everything. And at that point, they took him out. And now it makes even more sense because of what you said with this kill list.
Yeah.
They just took him out.
Absolutely.
What do we need this for?
Absolutely plausible. Yeah.
Wow.
I wasn't at MDC. I was at FCI Loretto in Pennsylvania. But if my experience was indicative of the broader Bureau of Prisons, and I think you'll agree with me. Number one, the guards are morons. They're lazy. They're in the guard booth either sound asleep or on the phone with their girlfriends or looking at porn on the computer. They're supposed to walk around, whatever it is, every 15 minutes, every 8 minutes when there's somebody on suicide watch. I never saw those guys. They walk into the booth for their 8-hour shift and they walk out 8 hours later for the very first time. Number two, the cameras never work. Now, they may have counted on the cameras never working. So that may have been part of the plan. I was a janitor in the chapel, Mike. And every time there was a religious service being planned, I had to go in there and shoo all the guys who were having sex out of the chapel. So why were there guys having sex in the chapel? Because the cameras didn't work. The cameras never worked. Now, with that said, this is MDC. It's not some low security, rural prison in Pennsylvania. These are very tough people, very bad people in many cases. And, I guess I wanted to believe that he had committed suicide, but then when Dr. Baden, Dr. Baden, the famous forensic, when he said,
he's one guy I really trust him, John. I've watched him and going way, way back, and I trust his analysis or his investigation on this.
And when he said that this was not a suicide, then I thought, okay, well, I'm with Dr. Baden. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only that, John. If Epstein had all of this information, and he obviously did, why would he want to commit suicide? I mean, his brother said it didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And let me tell you an associated story. I was in a low security prison. And as you know, almost all the pedophiles in the federal prison system are in low security prisons. Maximums and mediums are too dangerous for them. Minimums, they'll just run away and go molest another child. So they're all in the lows.
Right.
There was there was a very prominent Philadelphia attorney, Harvard Law School, mergers and acquisitions lead attorney at some big muckety-muck firm in Moscow, American firm in Moscow. But he was a pedophile. And so he molested this little boy from when he was 12 to when he was 15, and he got caught. And when he came back to the United States, he got wind that he was being investigated. Well, not even that he got wind. The kid filed a civil suit against him. And so what did he do? He ran away to Israel. Why Israel? Because Israel doesn't extradite Jews. They don't care what you did. You can be a mass murderer, a serial killer, you can be a pedophile, you can be the most notorious pedophile in the world. They're not extraditing you because they don't extradite Jews. So this guy ran to Israel. Well, he was a great lover of the ballet, and the boy that he was molesting was this ballet prodigy in Moscow. So what Interpol did, it was brilliant. They took out ads in Israeli newspapers saying that there was going to be this one-time only ballet featuring the greatest child ballerinas coming from Russia, and it was for one night only in Cyprus. Well, Cyprus is a hop, skip, and a jump from Israel. You get there in 40 minutes. And sure enough, he got on a plane. He flew to Cyprus to see this non-existent ballet, and they grabbed him in Cyprus and extradited him to the United States, and he got 20 years. So with that said, if I were Jeffrey Epstein and I own my own, jets, multiple jets, I've got billions of dollars hidden all around the world, why in the world would I not flee to Israel? The only thing that I can think of, why? Why would he stay? The only thing I can think of is that he believed he was safe. He believed he was safe. And I think it's because of what you just said, that he had so much dirt on so many important people that they wouldn't dare come after him. And then they did.
It's the only thing that makes sense, really. But there again, was Israel, if he was with Mossad, Israel was collecting all of this information, and they would have information from the indication that people that were involved in this horrible Epstein thing, they must have dirt on so many people in the world of stature, of meaning, of wealth.
Imagine. Yeah, it has to be. Like, my guess is we can't even imagine what they were able to collect through him. It has to be just staggering. I mean, already in the UK, look what's happening. Prince Andrew is no longer a prince. And not only is he no longer a prince, he's been stripped of his royal residence, essentially just thrown out into the street, and arrested last week. And he's going to be prosecuted because he allegedly gave Jeffrey Epstein classified defense ministry documents. Why in blazes would Jeffrey Epstein want classified UK defense ministry documents unless he's spying for a foreign power? Peter Mandelson,
Absolutely.
the former British ambassador to the United States and former minister and member of the House of Lords and senior member of the Labour Party, he kept saying, I didn't even know the guy. I met him one time. I didn't have his number. I'd never been to the island. And then in the latest tranche of documents, there are pictures of him in his underwear with a 16-year-old girl with the pictures taken from a hidden camera. So now they've arrested him. Why would they charge him with? For providing Jeffrey Epstein with classified trade negotiation documents, British positions on trade negotiations. What's Jeffrey Epstein going to do with that? He doesn't care about trade negotiations.
Exactly.
It was for a foreign power.
Exactly. And he had to have a lot of dirt in order to get that documentation. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable what this guy was able to do. It's just
Yeah,
So
crazy.
you would tend to believe then that it was murder and not suicide.